Hello and welcome to the fifth and final webinar in our series, Jumpstart Your Cloud Journey with Sierra-Cedar and Oracle Analytics Cloud. There will be a question and answer session at the end of our presentation today, so please submit any questions you may have using the questions or chat window located at the bottom of the webinar control panel. Today's presentation topic is Assess and Migrate On-Premise OBIEE to Oracle Analytics Cloud Services. Our presenters are Greg Vlahos, General Manager of our EPM and BI practice, Anil Kanuri, BI Architect, and Jason Little, VP of our EPM and BI practice, who will be starting us off with a recap of our previous sessions. Jason, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Welcome, everyone, and to today's fifth and final webinar series here today. We're looking forward to diving in today's topic here. Before we do that, wanted to share a couple key important topics and summarize some of the key considerations we've discussed up to this point, which will kind of help segue into our discussion today. So for those of you that have been attending our various sessions, or for anyone that's new on the session today, we started off by talking about the Oracle Analytics Cloud configuration process, and Bob Khalil and I went through the OAC architecture and the components of how you configure OAC. And the important point I want to emphasize as we go forward is keep in mind the Oracle Analytics Cloud is built with Oracle's platform as a service technology, which is important because it comes with all of the components required to deploy OAC. So you'll recall we've discussed you have your analytics instances with the Oracle Analytics Cloud. So the nice thing about the solution is you have the flexibility to deploy it different ways. You can have an S-based analytics instance, you can have a Oracle BI analytics instance, an Oracle data visualization analytics instance. So you have flexibility in how you deploy the architecture. And as you'll recall in one of our earlier sessions, we talked about how the solution comes with the storage and the Oracle database required for these analytics instances. And for those of you that have spoke with Oracle, they use the term universal credits. You may have heard that term thrown around, but keep in mind the deployment options with OAC provide you flexibility to deploy this different ways depending on the business needs. For example, you can deploy a smaller standard edition of the Oracle Analytics Cloud that we've talked about that could be used to support just S-base and data visualization only. Or you could deploy an enterprise edition of the Oracle Analytics Cloud, which of course could include BI, data visualization, and S-base. And each one of those, of course, has the supporting Oracle database technology and the storage technology available to deploy it. We've also spent a little time previously. You do have some optional configuration options like VPN services, for example, if you're connecting the Oracle Analytics Cloud back to your on-premise environment. So in addition to that, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the S-base deployment options and kind of how you design and build S-base databases. But in today's session, we're going to dive more into how you would move OBIEE to the Oracle Analytics Cloud, but also we're going to provide some demonstrations on the OAC BI and data visualization components that are available within the solution. We also, of course, in the last session talked about predictive analytics and how you can use OAC to create machine learning models as well, and some of the advanced features where you can actually set up a model and do some predictive analytics within the tool as well. So with that said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Greg, and we'll dive into today's topic, and looking forward to the session today. Greg?
All right, thanks, Jason. Next slide, please. Thanks. Yeah, and welcome everyone to this presentation. There's a lot of good information to cover, and hopefully you'll find this helpful and educational in the decisions you guys are looking to make. Agenda-wise, I'm going to cover a few slides just to kind of go over what I'd call the business case for migrating or consider migrating your on-premise OBIE to OAC. Kind of give you guys some reasons to consider for looking to do that or when to do that. Then I'm going to hand it over to Anil. He's our hands-on technical guy who's actually gone through multiple of these migrations and such. And I guess I won't read through here, but he'll kind of give you some considerations from the different migration paths based on the version that you're on, sizing the OEC environment, then the steps to kind of migrate and configure that. And we'll also cover some administration tasks, especially since you're assuming most folks on here are probably used to the on-premise OBIE, kind of actually show you some of the security administration options, up in OAC. Then Anil's going to hand it back to me. I'll do a little demonstration at the end where I'll briefly go into OAC BI dashboards reports just to give you a little flavor, although a lot of that's probably pretty similar if you're on near the most recent versions, but we'll talk about that. We'll show a little the day-by-day, the mobile app, which a lot of folks might have heard that, but I'll actually give you a little visual in person here. And then on data visualization, I also expect a lot of people might have seen that, but often it's being demoed just with some Excel data. We're going to be connected to Essbase and actually kind of show that, the kind of connecting all our presentations here of how that can kind of bring in the Essbase data as well. And of course, we're going to save the questions and answer sessions for the end. But next slide, please. Okay, so some business points to consider. Kind of here's a high-level recap I was trying to put onto one slide, and I'll go into a couple of these points in a little more detail following this. But this is a little bit more than just OBIE moved into the cloud, although as you'll see, we'll do a little bit more of a direct comparison to OBIE because I think that's been part of for folks to, when would I really consider moving my OBIE to the cloud? Is it covering all my, how I'm using the product and such? We'll blow into that in a little bit more detail, but the cloud OAC BI, that's going to receive any new feature first. And it's definitely the future direction of Oracle. We're pretty close to there being no more updates to the on-premise OBIE. Oracle's clearly stated that the cloud is the future. As probably these other presentations have covered, the data visualization effectively comes very easily with the OAC BI versus which would be, but Oracle will charge you for the on-premise. And you also have additional capabilities of integrated mobile types of BI, this day-by-day analytics, which we'll show you at the end. There's also a product called Synopsys, which is another mobile app. Besides hitting the BI content, this is gravitating more towards data visualization on mobile apps, where eventually you'll be able to hit any of the data sources that DV can. It can actually use your camera to take a picture of an Excel document and start analyzing that data. It does some pretty slick things. And we'll talk briefly how this is not Bix rebranded. I'll have a slide just to do a quick comparison, just in case folks might still have that mental image of the issues or the limitations that Bix first had compared to where OAC BI is. On the cost side, kind of the obvious. Obviously, if I no longer need hardware on premise for supporting my OBIE, I've got less servers to buy and maintain on premise, and the and Anil will touch upon this, but the upgrade process for patches and upgrades in the cloud is much more streamlined and to implement than on the on-premise version, and migrating between your dev and prod is much more streamlined. So you save a lot of time and it really eases up those processes as well as far as consideration. Flexibility and security, especially if you're new, you don't have to wait through that, go order the server, let it show up, start doing their baseline configurations. Oracle's very quick at enabling the hardware, whether it's your first time going up there, or you have the flexibility and scalability to expand your platform, obviously. Whether it's adding a server or adding memory, there's a lot of very ease of quick clicking capabilities to expand that kind of footprint. And ironically, security is an interesting one. Go back a year or so when cloud was first starting to boom, a lot of times security was a reason companies called out for not putting stuff up there in the cloud. They felt that they're exposing their data, but as frankly, in the last couple of years, hacks have become much more sophisticated. It's getting harder for a lot of companies to have the in-house talent to stay on top of preventing hacks and stuff. And with the focus of companies like Oracle, whose job is to have the top data scientists and security officers to protect from that. Folks are now starting to use security as a reason to go to the cloud. So I'm sure it's a little different for each company, but we're seeing definitely a lot more about that. And of course, the responsibility for Oracle having the uptime and stuff, they have their guarantees out there on that the availability of keeping your servers up. So it takes that pressure off your internal team as well. Next slide, please. Just a quick functional comparison between OBIE and OAC. I think this is a key reason why a lot of folks who have on-premise OBIE haven't put too much focus for the first couple of years on going to BICS or OAC BI, because you'd hear about, oh, it doesn't do this yet or it doesn't do that yet type general comments. But as far as where the OAC BI is today, the first point is, with the traditional use of OBIE, as far as your dashboard analytics, BI Publisher may be being used for some of those pixel perfect, as Oracle likes to say, reports and scheduling and emailing of those reports and such through BI Delivers. Those functions are pretty much all one for one these days. In addition to that, with OAC BI, if you're in the full footsteps, if you've say migrated your Hyperion planning to the cloud, you're using PBCS or ePBCS, OAC BI can hit that as a direct data source. On-premise OBIE cannot. If you move Essbase to the cloud, it's OAC BI that can use that as a data source. The on-premise isn't going to hit that one. Kind of mentioned the data visualization as included with the OAC footprint. Much more cost-effective in that, for that tool, which that's trying to, I view that as a little bit different than the dashboard analytics. Dashboards being my pre-built paths of start with some high KPIs and enable folks to drill down to look into those numbers, where data visualization is great for the self-service for my power users and such, whether they're hitting our BI environment or any other data source they have access to and such. Kind of like the Tableaus of the world and stuff. The data visualization is Oracle's version of that, but if you're really into the Oracle stack, it's data visualization that can really hit Essbase and PBCS as a data source, where those competitors are not going to be able to hit that. Our last presentation went into the machine learning that you'll get with the OAC BI, and I wanted to throw in data sync. It probably gets forgotten, but that's kind of an ETL tool that comes with OAC BI, and I'll use Sierra-Cedar as an example here. We don't just have our own versions of OAC for doing demos and proof of concepts and training, for clients and such. We have a separate set of OCPUs that we actually use in our production reporting environment across our business and such. So we're actually a client as well, and we use data sync to automate our loading of data from on-premise into the cloud, and our data comes from PeopleSoft and Salesforce and other sources, and it's all integrated into star schema designs, actually using the Oracle database as a service. So we just leverage that free ETL tool to automate our upload. So that in certain situations that just works fine. And of course, the mobile apps that we've already referenced. As far as things that are only with OBIE that I don't really get in the cloud version of OAC BI, the scorecard and strategic management, I always thought that was a pretty slick offering, but I haven't seen too many companies leverage it. That capability is not in OAC BI. The Oracle BI mobile application, obviously we've been talking about how OAC BI has the day-by-day and also the synopsis, phone apps, iPad apps, and such. The BI mobile app that they had for running your dashboards in a slightly different mode, that's kind of going away. So that one's phasing out, which is something to think about. And BI Delivers is an OAC BI, so you can schedule your reports and deliveries and such. But one thing we haven't seen yet is the ability to seed cache for performance. So that would be one other consideration to think about. But next slide, Anu. Okay. And then there's the I guess the other pressing reason that folks will consider is support for OBIE. And the big focus are folks who are on OBIE, some version of 11, whether it's 11.117 or 11.119. I think by December of this year, 11.117 comes off support, period. So if you're in 11.117 or earlier, it's going to be fully off support. So there's definitely a decision point on either having no support or the decision to migrate to a more up-to-date version of on-premise or go to OAC BI. So this is another compelling business case that probably escalates the decision process. By the end of this year, and also in 2018 December, even if you're on 11.119, it's going to lose Premier support meaning you can still get support, but you're going to have to start paying a premium, paying additional just to kind of keep your 11.119 on support. So just kind of sharing what we're seeing. There'll probably be some compelling reasons just to keep your version supported, to whether to upgrade on-premise to the latest version or to consider the move to the cloud. So just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that timeline pressure. All right, next slide.
Yeah.
And then just a quick one here. Jason actually had touched upon it as well, kind of comparing what was BICS, the original BI cloud solution for services, but versus OAC BI. The OAC BI platform, that's definitely the future roadmap. And the key difference was that BICS was truly the SaaS, software as a service, versus platform. And the big difference is with a platform, it kind of is your underlying operating system. It's kind of like your box in the cloud. So as on the infrastructure side, we actually have the ability to get under the covers, performance tune it, change parameters and such, where with BICS, our hands were kind of tied. We couldn't even see a lot of that underlying technologies, as well as all the newer features that have been getting added. BI Publisher, delivers, Essbase as a source. Those things have all come into the OAC BI as they've built this out more robustly. And probably most folks know this now, but OAC, I mean, it is really just like if you're used to today OBI in the cloud, if you're working with your RPD, your metadata model, you'll use your same desktop administrator. You just post it up to the cloud, versus into your on-premise one. So it works the same, where BICS had the simplified model that couldn't do all the federation and advanced things that we could do with the RPD, or it did have a clunky way to try to work with an RPD, but this is definitely the real deal solution. But with that, there's a lot to cover, so I apologize if I talk a little fast. We'll definitely be taking questions at the end, but I'm probably going to move into what a lot of folks here would want to hear. We'll pass this over to Anil, and he'll kind of start digging into the actual migration process and assessment.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. Thanks for the briefing. So hello, everybody. This is Anil. I'm going to cover the next slides. So far, we have seen the benefits of migrating to Oracle Analytics Cloud and why this is the right time to upgrade or migrate to Oracle Analytics Cloud BI. So the next slides will cover on the migration paths and who are eligible to migrate to Oracle Analytics Cloud, and what approach we have to take in order to successfully orchestrate this migration. So the next slides, let's talk about the migration path and the pre-check. So the customers on OBIE 11.117 and above can migrate to Oracle Analytics Cloud with a direct path. So that means there is a migration utility that we can use on OBIE 11.117 or 11.118 or 9 to migrate your RPD catalog and application roles to Oracle Analytics Cloud BI. Unfortunately, the same migration tool don't work on the previous version. So if you are on OBIE 10G or OBIE 11.115, you have to consider an interim upgrade on-premise. So you have to migrate to 11.117 on-premise, and then we have to migrate. We have to use this migration utility to migrate our content to Oracle Analytics Cloud BI. So the number of upgrades that require depends on the version you are on. If you are on OBIE 10G, we need to see the migration utility. If it can migrate only up to OBIE 11.115, then we have to migrate to that version, and then we have to again upgrade to 11.117. So that should be a two-step process. So it really depends on the version you are on. If you are on OBIE 11.115, it's just like migrating to 11.117 and then to OAC. And also, if any of you are on BI App 796 version, you can upgrade your OBIE portion to Oracle Analytics Cloud as long as the database version is supported. So if your data warehouse version is supported by Oracle Analytics Cloud, you can consider moving to OAC. And which is very rare, but if any of you are running a 32-bit operating system on-premise and OBIE is installed on that, so if you want to move to Oracle Analytics Cloud, the first thing you have to do is migrate to a 64-bit operating system on-premise on the same version you are on, and then migrate your content to Oracle Analytics Cloud. We cannot directly migrate from 32-bit operating system to Oracle Analytics Cloud. I believe like that's a very, very rare scenario. I hope like none of you are running on 32-bit OS, which also gives poor performance compared to 64-bit. And the next point talks about the BICS. So if any of you are using BICS, you can still migrate to Oracle Analytics Cloud. So the only caveat here is that we have to run a script to convert your data model to RPD and then deploy it on Oracle Analytics Cloud. So that's the extra step that we have to consider. But we did our migration. We initially went from on-premise to BICS solution, and then we migrated our content from BICS to Oracle Analytics Cloud. So we can certainly help if any of you are on BICS today. And BICS may be going out of support soon, so it's good to consider that. So the next points talk about the pre-check process. So this is often overlooked in current migration path. So we always assume like the latest version supports our surrounding softwares, and we go with this upgrade, and at some point like we'll get a surprise, hey, my SSO tool is not supported. So it's always good to have this pre-check process run to see like what are the software surrounding my Oracle Business Intelligence software. So the database, SSO tool, I mean, if you are using any SSL, what type, I mean, is it a TLS or SSL v1, v2? So what we are using, so it's good to consider all these and see, and also consider like what features we are using on-premise, and to see like if all of these are supported or on Oracle Analytics Cloud. So if something is not supported, we may have to upgrade the third-party software to the latest version before we migrate to Oracle Analytics Cloud. That we often see that. So we often see that with the database actually. And also this pre-check will help us quantify the artifacts that needs to be migrated. So the number of reports we have, how many complex reports we are having, and are we using any BI publisher reports, and how we are using these delivers. Are we using like a deliver setup like every 2 minutes or 1 minute, and like what kind of security model we are using. So I feel like some of us are still using this authentication and authorization init blocks within the RPD to connect to LDAP server, which is actually moved to WebLogic server from OBIE 11G onwards, but still some of us are using that old approach. So if any such things are still being practiced, it's good time to move to the standard procedure. So the pre-check covers all this stuff. And let's move on to the next slide. The first thing migrating to, before planning for migration or upgrade is like how to size my environment. So whether it is on-premise or whether it is Oracle Analytics Cloud, the question remains the same. So what should my new server be? Like how much memory I want, how much CPU I want. So this slide covers that. So I know like in the one of the past sessions, Bob Khalil covered this topic, but some of you may be joining this for the first time. So I just want to cover it briefly and explain like how to size this OAC instance. So this OAC instance is nothing but a virtual machine image with pre-installed OBIE software and pre-configured OBIE software on this virtual machine image that Oracle is providing us to deploy on the Oracle Cloud. So that is, I mean, in Crush, that is the OAC instance, but I mean, if I specified the definition of it in the slide, so if you want to refer, but while deploying this virtual machine image, we need to define the number of CPU and RAM that we are going to provide to this virtual machine. So that is up to us, like what we purchase. So based on that, we need to provide the resources for this virtual machine image. So the instance sizing, so how much memory and CPU do I need for this OAC instance? So the, how we define this instance sizing is exactly the same like how we define it for on-premise versus OAC BI. So we have to consider the number of concurrent users and their activity, or they're just running pre-built reports, or they're running ad hoc, a lot of ad hoc queries. So that adds some overload onto the BI server. And what is our database size, and what are the data volumes for this? And we have to consider all these before deciding like how much CPU and memory do I need. And on the OAC hardware sizing, it is measured in OCPU. It's just a single terminology that we have to remember. It's nothing but the Oracle CPU. So one OCPU equals 2 virtual processors. And you may be wondering like what happened to memory. So we will see that in the next slide. So this OAC shapes, so the shape is nothing but a profile, so that we provide it to the virtual machine image. So if I'm deploying this virtual machine image, I need to decide on the number of OCPUs and the amount of memory. So that is nothing but a shape. So we have two types of shapes available today. It is a general purpose shape and a high memory shape. So you can, we will see like what these shapes are in the next slide. So before that, we need to understand like what an OCPU is. An OCPU is nothing but one physical core of Intel Xeon processor with hyper-threading enabled, which is important. Like hyper-threading is enabled here, and each Intel Xeon processor equals to 2 virtual CPUs. And these CPUs can be added in the increments of 1, 2, or 4. And one point I want to mention here is there's another type of CPU also available, which is a Spark OCPU. But this is available only for the dedicated cloud compute instance. The difference between the normal cloud compute instance and the dedicated is, in the dedicated, you'll get the whole server for yourself. It is not shared between the clients. But in the cloud compute instance, we get the virtual machine image out there. So we are running a VM on the physical server. So that's a major difference. And also, dedicated cloud compute instance costs more, and the number of OCPUs that we have to purchase usually depends in hundreds or 200. So it's a little expensive, but if we have to consider like dedicated, we can get an option of Spark OCPU as well. So the next slide talks about general purpose versus high memory shapes. So what are these shapes? This shape, like for general purpose shape, we get like 7.5 gig of memory per OCPU. So each OCPU will get 7.5 gig of memory, and as you increase the number of OCPUs, you increase the amount of memory that you are assigning to this virtual machine image, the OAC instance. So the high memory shapes, we get like 15 gig of memory per OCPU, and if you are increasing your number of OCPUs, your amount of memory will increase that you can assign to an OAC instance. So the point here is, memory is tied to the OCPUs. If you just want to leave your OCPU where it is and just want to increase your memory, no, it is not possible. You have to increase your OCPU to get more memory. If you want to have more memory per OCPU, you have to choose high memory shapes, which are usually for the memory intensive applications. Let's move on to the next slide and see this on-demand flexibility. This is something of having your OAC BI instance on cloud. This is one of the advantages, like the flexibility. So if you want to have your development environment up and running only for 16 hours a day and no weekends, so you can specify that I want to run it 16 hours a day and want to run it like 22 days a month, then your overall price will come down, because they will promise, the uptime promise is much less. And also, like if you see like there's a demand growth next month, like, or there's an enrollment going on in your university, if you are working in a university and you want to increase the capacity. So usually if you are on-premise, you have to wait a couple of months, or you have to plan it months in advance to purchase hardware and to install it and add a downtime and all that. But being in cloud, you can just purchase OCPU on the fly. So you just have to buy it when you need it. And also you have the flexibility, I believe, like you have the flexibility to pay as you go. So you can buy it and pay as you go and as you use. So that is one of the beauty of having your OAC instance on, your BI on cloud. Let's move on to the next slide. OAC migration steps and configuration tasks. So let's see the actual migration tasks and how we have to plan it and how we are going to do this. So yeah. So the first thing, when we migrate this from OBIE 11.1.7, I took this example because that is the least version that supports the direct path of migration from OBIE 11.1.7 to OAC. So if you are on OBIE 11.1.7 and want to migrate to OAC BI, you have to consider it like an out-of-place upgrade. So you have to really, first thing you have to do is you have to provision your OAC server first before taking any next steps. So I will just show you the screen in a couple of slides, and after discussing the next point as well. So the next thing is to generate the BI migration utility. So we have to generate a BI migration utility in the new OAC server. So that's the reason we are provisioning this OAC server first, and then we are generating the migration utility in the OAC server and copying this migration utility back to 11.1.7. And then we are running the export command to export RPD, web catalog, and application roles, which is very important. So earlier, I believe, like in the earlier version of script, we don't have the capability to migrate application roles from 11.1.7, but now we have. So we can migrate application roles as well. Otherwise, like we should have to manually export the system ZASN file, which is one of the drawbacks when Greg mentioned, like in BICS, we don't have access to the underlying software. So we really cannot migrate the system ZASN file because we don't have access to the operating system. So that is one of the drawbacks that I see out there. But today, like, yes, we can migrate our RPD dashboard, web catalog, and application roles to OAC BI. And the next thing is once we have that, we'll have an output jar file. So if you are migrating from 11G, you will get a jar file. If you're migrating from policy, you'll get a bar file, which is a snapshot. And once we have the file, we'll go to the OAC server and run the import command. And I can show you some steps up to the first two steps out here. So let me go over to OAC. So this is our OAC instance. So this is, the platform services. So we can see the different services we have here. There are, technically there are more services, but what we are seeing here is what we implemented. So here, like once we are in instances, we have to click on create instance. So the first screen in the while creating this instance, it asks for the service name. So I'm not going to create it, but just taking you to that screen up to there. So so this is the SSH public key. So as Greg mentioned in the past, like this is platform as a service, we can get into the server. So we are going to generate a private key to get into the server, and we have to download it. We cannot go to the next screen without downloading it, because without that key, you cannot get into that server. And you can always generate a new one if you lose this. So the region specifies like where you want to deploy your OAC server. It is really optimal to select a region that is nearest to your data warehouse. If you are located in Eastern time zone, somewhere in Virginia, but your data center and data warehouse is deployed in Texas or somewhere, you can choose a central region. It depends like where your data warehouse is. So I'm going to select East. So the IP network, if you have any VPN or anything, so you can just select that IP network and click on next here. That will take us to the main screen. So this is a single screen where we configure or provision our OAC instance and provide the options and parameters that it requires. And the next screen is just confirm, and it starts building that. So the first thing is identity management. So if you want to use a load balancer or IDCS, in our case, like it's no, so we didn't use that. But we have our users created in IDCS, but if you want to connect your Active Directory, yes, you can do that. In this, the options we have is a BI and data visualization and SBase. So if I select BI, so data visualization is automatically selected, but if I don't want it and I want my OCPU goes only to the BI, yes, I can do that. And the next one is the sizing that we discussed a few slides ago. So if I have one OCPU, I'll get 7.5 gig of RAM. Or if I select like 16 OCPU, I get 120 gig of RAM. If I want to use memory intensive, I can select 16 OCPU with 240 gig of RAM. So it's just based on like what we purchase. It will not trim down based on your purchase order, but you have to look at your purchase order and select the number of OCPUs that you want to use for this particular instance. And this OCPU, this OAC instance comes with 280 gig. Like if I select BI, it comes with 280 gig disk on it, and out of that, 180 gig is usable, and the rest of 100 gigs are pre-configured software installed on it. And if I want to add extra disk space, I can always do that at a later point. The next thing I want to talk is the cloud storage configuration and database. So cloud storage configuration is the container configuration. So the container is something that is out of our virtual machine image disk. So our OAC instance local disk, this is our local virtual machine local disk. And if I want to store these backups, I mean, I always want to store backups out of my OAC instance storage. There is no point in storing the backup here, because if it crashes, if the VM crashes, my backup is also lost. So I want to configure a cloud storage, and this is where my backups and provisioning logs and are stored. So we need to do this pre-configuration before coming to this screen. We have to create this container and get those container URLs and use that here. And the next point is a database. So similarly, like for on-premise, before we start our OBIEE installation, we configure our RCU database, repository databases. So similarly, like here, we have to configure our database on cloud DBAS for repositories. And once we create that, we have to come here and select like what database we want to use for this OBIEE instance, and provide its username, password, and schema prefix similar to what we do. And the service administrator. So this is nothing but the WebLogic user on-premise. So whereas the WebLogic user can log in into console, BI, everywhere. So it's a super user out there in OBIEE on-premise. So similarly in cloud, so we get this admin user. So we can always change it to WebLogic if you want, if you prefer that way to have a similarity to on-premise instances. We can always do that. So this is how instance is created. I'm not going to do it any further. Yeah, once you do that and click next and confirm, it takes around 30 minutes to 1 hour to deploy that instance, and that would be awesome. Like you are having your OAC BI instance in 30 minutes to 1 hour once you decided to take this OAC path. So yeah, much faster compared to on-premise. And the next one I want to show is generating the BI migration utility. So okay, so I'm in this. I'm in my demo instance server. So this is Oracle Enterprise Linux, and if I want to generate a migration utility, so all I had to do is I had to write a package, and I will say like OAC demo migration tool.jar, and I just have to run this command, and it is packaging the migration tool, and it will create a jar file for me, which I can take it back to the 11G instance and use this jar file to run the export command and capture all the required details. So you can see like this OAC demo is created. I can take it out of the server and copy it back to my 11G server. So it is that easy. And if you want to download this, there is an option to download this as well. So if sorry, this page got expired. So yeah. Let me click here. Let's see if it is still active. Yes, so if I come to the snapshots, there is an option to download this and run the migration tool. So if I click on download, it will do the same thing, but I'm more comfortable generating the script myself when I want to do this migration. So the reason behind it is I'm not sure like whether this is pre-packaged or it is running the script right now to generate the migration utility. So I prefer doing it from the command line. So, but you really have two options when you are doing it like for the first time. So you really have two options, whether you want to download it or generate it. So once this is generated, I cannot really show the next steps because we should have an active 11G environment where we can run this migration and generate an import, run the export command and generate an output. So we really don't have an active 11G environment now. So we migrated almost like a year and a half ago. So yeah, for the hybrid implementation, so we call these hybrid implementations if we leave our data warehouse on-premise. So we really have the choice. If you want to migrate your data warehouse to the Oracle Cloud, you really can do that. So you can use database as a service and deploy your data warehouse there. too. So yeah, in that case, like it would be much more optimal to have the data warehouse along with this OBIEE installation. But I mean, in either case, you have two data centers to deploy your OAC instance close to your data warehouse in case if you do not choose this and want to choose a hybrid implementation. So you can really leave your data warehouse on-premise, and in order to establish connection between your on-premise and Oracle Cloud, so most of us worry about the security. So there are two options here. So there's a WebLogic and remote desktop connection, which encrypts the communication between your OBIEE instance and database on-premise. So we have to install WebLogic and RDC on-premise, and that will we get a public key from Oracle Analytics Cloud and deploy it there on-premise. So that way, like, there will be encrypted communication between database on-premise and OBIEE on cloud. And the other option, sorry, I think that's more on. So the other option I have here is a VPN, configuring the VPN. So if I want to configure the other way that Oracle is pushing nowadays for all the customers who want to implement this hybrid implementation, who want to have this hybrid implementation, they can use this VPN. So the VPN is between data center and data center. So they can use this VPN from Oracle Cloud data center to your on-premise, to your data center, wherever it is. So Oracle uses Quantization services VPN gateway. So if you have a supported VPN server, so you can have encrypted communication between data center to data center. So the first option is just between the database and your OBIEE instance. The second option is between your data centers. So that is a major difference. There's quite a bit of work, like to open the required ports and establish connections, so that can be achieved easily. Let's move on to the next slide, which is about the post-migration configuration tasks. So once we migrate our content to OAC BI, so we have to follow some post-migration tasks. So this is similar to what we used to do on-premise upgrades as well, like moving from 10G to 11G or 11.1.15 to 11.1.17 or 11.1.9. We used to follow almost similarly same steps. As long as we have out-of-place upgrade, we always used to follow this. So the same, almost the same steps apply to OAC BI as well. So once you migrate this OAC BI, so if there is any WebLogic security, like we have it, custom users created out there, not the application roles are migrated in the Enterprise Manager, but if you have any custom users created in the WebLogic security on the default identifier, so you can you have to recreate them. And on the EM security, if you have any flags like the optimized flag or anything enabled out there, so you have to manually create them in OAC BI Enterprise Manager. So the other main thing I want to specify is in Wix we never get access to some of the components, but in OAC we always we can access our Enterprise Manager and the WebLogic console, similar to how we access them on-premise. So exactly similar to how we used to access them. So the other thing is the BI and PS config files, so the BI and the presentation server config files. So if we on-premise, like or the years of usage, so we optimize like how much cache I want to keep, whether I want usage tracking or not. So we configure this NPS config, and the presentation services. So we configure this instance config, like how much rows I want to download. I want to allow the users to download, how many rows I want to display on the dashboard, and what would be the size of the cubes or anything like that. So we those kind of configuration changes we need to migrate from on-premise to Oracle Cloud. And the logs. So let's say like you migrate your OAC BI, you migrated to OAC BI now, and you decommissioned your on-premise OBI 11G server, and you have the tickets from last 2 months or 3 months pending in your support queue, and you don't have any logs to review those tickets. So to avoid those kind of scenarios, I recommend like migrating your logs for at least last 3 months to your OAC BI instance, so you can always refer them at a later time or to resolve a support issue. So the next thing is configure the database to use data direct drivers, because you are moving to latest OBIE version. So we have to use this we have to check like if you are using the latest version of drivers to connect to database, which will give you optimal performance always. So that is the main point. That is the main point here. And usually we achieve that using ODBC and ODBC.ini. And if you are using SQL Server or MySQL, you need to really edit this ODBC.ini and establish a connection. So the next step is configure usage tracking. So if you are having usage tracking on-premise, you have to redo that on OAC BI. And if you are migrating to on-premise out-of-place upgrade, you have to do that. So it's exactly similar. And configuring this LDAP. So if you are, so because we are changing the server, we have to reconfigure LDAP, Active Directory, and SSL and SSO. So this has to be done. This cannot, there is no way to migrate this, even on-premise or Cloud BI. So there is no way to migrate this. So on the SSL part, I just want to show OAC BI comes with self-signed certificate, which is good for 1 year. But whenever a user logs in, they'll get a real warning stating that, hey, do you want to trust this server? Because it is a self-signed certificate. Browser do not know whether to trust that certificate or not. We have to trust it. But after 1 year, it expires. We have to purchase our own CS certificate and deploy that. So it's good to do it on the first day instead of waiting for 1 year and causing inconvenience to end users. So we deployed our certificate out here, which is BI demo. So we can, I can quickly show you the certificate out here. So we just have to purchase it and deploy it. So we purchased it for 3 years, the life of OAC instance, and then deployed it here. So on the first day. So it's a good practice and it's highly recommended. So yeah, and if you are using BI Publisher and you need to check the Java host settings, similar to what we have in the BI and presentation server config files, we have to check the BI Publisher configuration files as well. And lastly, we need to edit the database connections in RPD, which is pretty common with any upgrades or migration. And the last point is to test dashboards and reports. Minor format cleanup may be required. So yeah, with every upgrade, we may lose little formatting, colors, or anything. So we may have to redo that stuff. So the last, the next slide talks about the OAC security options and demonstration. So yeah, the major security changes in OBIE 12c is BI system user and BI system application role are removed now. So right now they call it the system user. There is no BI system user. We encountered a lot of issues in the past, like in OBIE 11g, when what happens if a BI system user password is changed in the enterprise manager. We used to encounter those kind of problems, but those no longer exist now in this new version. And the GUIDs are removed, which is a major relief to administrators when they upgrade or change servers. I mean, when they migrate this catalog or change to a new server, they always used to run into issues saying like a user coming up like, I'm not able to access my folder. So that is really because of the GUID. So Anil has a GUID of 1234 in development, and once my catalog is migrated to a new server, I may get a GUID of 3456. So it doesn't match up. So now it is user ID centric. It is tagged to Anil, not 1234 anymore. So which is a major relief. There is no need to do GUID refresh in these future versions. So the database security store, which is somewhat like major relief for Windows users. So if they, in Windows, we sometimes, rarely see corruption of files. So these security files, if they are corrupted, we have to recreate them. So now they are moved to database security store. The next thing is catalog groups are not supported. In OBIE 10G, we use them extensively. And in 11G, they are supported, but a lot of people moved out of that and started using application roles. But if any of you are still using catalog groups, it's time to move out of that. They are no longer supported. And OAC uses IDCS to grant access to cloud resources. So this identity cloud service is used to grant access to cloud resources. Don't confuse between OBIE 12c access to IDCS to cloud resources. So I have like 2 levels of access. So here, if I go to these users, I have a lot of users out here, and these, oops, sorry. So yeah, my browser Safari is running into some issues. So yeah, I have these users here. This doesn't mean like all these users have access to BI. These have access only to the cloud resources. That means like analytics or database or anything. So the my OAC users are created within the WebLogic console if I want, within the WebLogic console or Active Directory. So the way I want to maintain. I'm going to show like how to create this user in the next slides. Let's complete this slide first. So OAC comes with the default self-signed certificate. I talked about this in the last slide. So, and OAC delivers now support SSL option in the earlier versions in December 2017 upgrade. So we don't have the option to configure Oracle delivers with a mail server that is SSL configured. So now we have that option to do that. And the next one is the administration demo. This is where I'll show like how to create new user and little briefing. Yeah. So the beauty of this OAC BI, like this latest version, I like what I like here is like I come from the administration background, and during the administration, I have to go to multiple URLs to capture the information that I need. But in OAC BI, I have everything in a single place. So I can go, if I want to create a user in WebLogic console, I can do it from WebLogic console if I want to. But I mean, I have the single page in this console where I can do all the administration activities. So if I want to create a user, I can create a user here and assign an application role here. So this user will automatically replicate it to WebLogic console. You can see the same user in WebLogic console as well. And I can assign this user application role here. And similarly, like, this is the point I want to make here is like the users that you saw here are different from the users that you see here. So the real difference is like these users have access to the BI and assign certain application roles out here, so they can perform their duties on the BI server. But these users here really defines like whether they can access the cloud, create the analytics server, create the instance, or create a database server. So that kind of activities they can perform once the user is created here. So that is a major difference I want to highlight. And the next thing is the grant application roles, which we already covered, and the take snapshot. So the snapshots are really here. So if I want to take a snapshot, let's say like there's a request to migrate the content from development to production. So I can just take a new snapshot, and I just have to provide like why I'm taking this, migrating to next and migrating to production, done by this on this and this date. No need to capture the data as well. It automatically captures that. And once I have the snapshot, I'll get a bar file. I can migrate this to next server. Also, like if I want to replace data model, which is nothing but like uploading the RPD. So if I want to upload a RPD, I have to say like replace data model and then upload an RPD out here. And the next thing is a connection. So we are not using data model. We are using RPD out here. So that's the reason like we are not going to get anything here. So it clearly says like we are using an RPD file, not a data model. Like in Bix, we use data model. That's the only way. Like it converts RPD to data model, but now we can use RPD here. I think Greg covered it in the previous slide. So yeah, so this is the place where we get the public key if we want to configure WebLogic with RDC. So this is a place we get the public key. And I mean, there's a virus scanner. If you're planning to upload any files or anything, you can configure this to your, I mean, even while importing the snapshots or anything, like you can, if your organization has a virus server configured, so you can just provide the URL and port here. So every upload will be scanned by that virus, by your antivirus software. So, which is a good thing. So it secures everybody who is on the cloud. So yes. Let's move on to, yeah, the sessions and query cache. So if you are on, if you are on OBIE home, so on the administration screen, you can see pretty much like what I'm seeing here in the main session. So yeah, so the same screen is displayed here. So the advantage is like everything can be done from a single screen instead of going here or to the WebLogic console. So I can do most of the administration activities from this screen. I can even issue a SQL. So if somebody says like, hey, I'm not able to connect or run the SQL, I can do that from this place. And if you're having maps and map viewer configured in your previous environment, you can do that. But I mean, a little extra setup is required, obviously. So the full backup, the full backup, let's go to this place and go to, oops. Let's see if it comes up or no. I don't know. So let me see if I can go to different browser. So it don't happen here. Chrome. So yeah. So I'm here in this analytics. So it's really a browser issue. So my Safari isn't supported. So if I go to the instances here, and if I want to take a backup of an instance, a backup is nothing but like full backup. So which has everything like the RPD catalog and my changes, files and everything. So if I want to take a backup, so I had to go onto the administration and say like, I want to back up now. So it will back up all the contents that I have on this development server. So it is really convenient. In on-premise, like we have to depend on a third-party team, like you may have the ENC Square or somebody doing that stuff, but here it is, you are in control. You can take the backup before. I mean, when you're applying a patching, so it automatically takes a backup. So in on-premise, you have to ask your third-party team to take a backup before you apply patching. So there's a dependency out there, but here you don't have any such dependency. In patching, I have like 2 patches available here. I'm going to apply this after our webinar. So I just kept it open. The other servers are upgraded to the latest version. So once there is a patch, so I just need to do the pre-check. If the pre-check is passed successfully, then I just have to apply patch, and it automatically takes the backup, and then it will apply the patch. If something goes wrong, you can always revert back. So it is really convenient for administrator to have all of these in place, and more convenient as well, instead of using a O patch, which is really tedious compared to this. So yeah, and let me move on to the slide. Sorry. Yeah. So I think I'm done with this. I covered all the slides, so I'm handing it over to the Greg for a brief OAC BI demo. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Neil.
Great.
And as yep. Hopefully everyone can hear me now. So yeah, I'll make this kind of concise, but kind of want to touch upon just briefly 3 programs, products here, just to give some visuals to folks. I'm not sure what version some people might be looking at, so we're going to briefly look at OAC BI dashboards. That should look pretty similar, although it's definitely the latest and greatest, and there's some little minor changes in some instances, or depending what version you're coming from, some visuals. We'll look a little bit at the mobile day by day, and then we'll see some data visualization, including over Essbase. So I believe I got everything queued up here. So first, just the traditional look. Yeah, this should look pretty similar to folks as far as the home catalog dashboards. There's a new look and such, but when you migrate from OBIE, there's definitely, for your end users, not really much of a learning curve other than just a different URL to log into and such. And yeah, just very briefly, I mean, when I think of comparative data visualization and such, good dashboard design would typically start at a high level, more that executive summary, some KPIs, you're looking at some trends, but then if you see numbers, you could drill down on them, say I want to analyze this by product. In some case, so obviously your custom color coding. Charles charts have been out for a little while in case folks haven't seen those, depending on your version, and this is kind of that 3-dimensional perspective, this is product family. This data set's sort of a SOTUS family set, but got some products by region, and then there's a rolling, in this case, 36 months of activity, or we could change the prompts up top. And if you see something that catches your interest, actually you could drill on the chart itself, or just pick an amount here to drill down to the detail. So I think dashboards are definitely best for that repeatable analysis of key metrics I want to track, and the ability to drill down to what's beneath them. Now, some of the slightly newer features, although some have been a while, again, depends on your version, but the ability to interact with the data set. I mean, you can of course always drop stuff to Excel, but when I'm in here, I'll just do a couple things. Maybe I'll move this to the prompt area if I wanted the ability just to pick and choose a different year or month. I could, now one thing a lot of times for a report, different users maybe want a slightly different, way to look at the column set or things include based on their business unit division. One thing that's nice is make the original report for the dashboard with a superset of columns. Then I could come in here as a user. I could maybe do something different. Well, maybe I want to see this split out by state. So that I brought in the state column, but I want to put it over here first. So I drag it to the left. So now I'm viewing by state. I could move columns around. I could always, if I want to, in this case, if I want to sort these by the best performing to worst and such. So I can manipulate these, and I could always I could come over here under my account and save my perspective of this report. So every time I come to this dashboard, it shows up the way I like it. So it's a way to customize reports. Even though it's one report, it's viewed differently by users based on their login. It's a pretty powerful feature. And one other thing you can do that a lot of folks don't know about is a good way to share. If I go to the bottom of this report, I mean, yes, I can always, I can always export to Excel, which a lot of folks like to do. But if for a fellow BI user, there's this create bookmark link. You see the short URL up here right now. If I click this, that's going to get a lot longer. I'm going to come here and just going to copy it. I could email to a fellow BI user. They could they could click on it. Now, it's not a way around security. They'd be asked to log in to make sure they can access the data. But notice when I get in this new browser, it literally states in here the column. It's actually past the manipulated report the way it was, and I could sit there and as a user interact with it. So just a quick view. Most likely that's very common for most folks. There are little enhancements, like when I'm formatting for a percentage, I now have a checkbox to multiply by 100 or not. That could be important for folks who view S-based through BI. Sometimes we'll multiply in a cube by 100, where the formatting is going to also try to do that. I'm going to, let's see, now I'm going to switch over to the day-by-day app, which I just synchronized my phone so that, okay, so everyone's looking at my phone. So this is the day-by-day app, just to give you a quick visual of this guy, where you can actually have reports get refreshed and sent to you a couple of different ways. But I think of this as my whole BI solution with a Google search on this area up here, whether I want to start typing or just like any of these apps today, like Google, I can just talk to it. Show sales by product, family, and year. So based on what I said, it brings back a couple different candidates. Then I could interact with them further. I'm clicking on this ellipses up top here. Maybe I want to change that chart type. I think this one looks better as a stacked vertical. And then once it's here, there's a couple things. Maybe I like this report. The smart feed, that's my front screen, or this bring back button, I can actually schedule it to refresh. By place, if I want to tie it to a customer's location when I want this data refresh, or just by time if it's something I want to schedule. Say I want to schedule it to come in daily at, I could just leave it at this time it's here, but you could change the time and hit done. And now it's going to keep popping back and refreshing. So that's just a quick look at the day by day, but there's some neat things that you can do with it and such. And conscious of time, now I'm going to jump over into data visualization. But this is important because compared to a lot of data visualizations, I am over an S-based financial database. And I'm guessing probably not as many folks have seen this, because there are some differences to working with S-based. And when I'm designing an S-based database that I'm going to use data visualization, there's a couple things I might add to it, which I could get into if folks want detailed follow-ups and such. So this is a high-level report. Right now, I'm looking at net sales, kind of looking at my budget variance and my year-over-year variance. you can see a waterfall chart down here where it was at the beginning of the year and by month, the incremental ups and downs. So I could change this, instead of looking at net sales, maybe this is kind of my high level P&L. So maybe I want to look at my total SG&A. And the same high level information. Now let's do a more traditional P&L summary. Typically with finance folks, we want to see current month, current year to date. So here's a very simple, this is looking at the month of March, my actual kind of budget variance, year-over-year variance. But I want to change this time perspective to not just be periodic, but I want year to date included as well. Now, if you're coming from the relational perspective, that, as an OBIE, I would think that might just blow you away a little bit, that I can just suddenly, all my measures are just immediately replicated year to date. Yeah, because in OBIE, you actually have to create different metrics for year, YTD versus monthly balances and such. And actually, if you're going to Kaleidoscope, K-Scope, I'm actually giving a presentation on pros and cons of reporting BI over S-based versus relational. And I don't know if cons is the best word, but they kind of go over where there's different approaches to each and which one might be a little neater to assess. Now, also, this is a little bit more interactive than just a basic report, because I'm going to right click here and I want to view account detail. So this 21,000 number. So drill down to net sales. And so this is the actual journal entry account level that gets back to that 21,000. And similarly, I can come over to the year to date. I'll pick material this time just to show this is passing the parameters. View account detail, and this is all, again, this is just using S-base as a source. One advantage to the OAC BI or OBIEs, that's a good platform to integrate S-base and the relational data, so I could drill down to my transaction level detail as well. One other thing, I'll just jump over to one more here. This is the budget variance. The year over year is similar, except this one's comparing to budget. Some other nice things I like to do with S-base that just can be easy. If I want to view this this is viewing by thousands, but if it's high level data, you want to view it by millions, or if you actually just want to look at the whole numbers, this is something we often build into an S-based data source just to make it convenient for that high level reporting or more detailed reporting and such. And this report would drill down to the detail as well, just leveraging that same drill down feature. But that was probably all just interested. Well, I'll show one other one in case some folks are a little bit newer. I'll bring up more of a sales perspective. Kind of show a little of the map integration here. So a simple data set, just showing some customers. This is alphabetical. If I want to sort this high to low, see my most profitable customers. This is color coded. The darker, the more sales. But also I set this up as a filter. So if I want to drill on Delaware there, I click on Delaware and it's going to filter the left-hand side to just show me the Delaware customer sales. Conversely, I could then just go to Pennsylvania here, a different data set. And these are also created so that I could view the customer sales detail off of any of these detail lines if I wanted to drill back through. But also just to show you the ease of these products, I'm gonna real quickly rebuild what you're looking at from scratch. So metric-wise, we had quantity, net sales. This one's a very simple one, just in customer name. I'm gonna right click, I'll pick my visualization, and frankly, that was just a table. It wasn't anything special. I want customer name to be first. I'm just gonna drag this up. So that was the customer one. And then that other report, that net sales, that was net sales by state. I'm gonna right click, pick visualization. This time I'm gonna pick map. And it's recognizing state and the state values as the keyword. It automatically brought up this map. Now, as it is, if I just click on this state, it's gonna highlight which ones are associated with that state. But in that first one, I actually had the filter. So I come here and I put use as a filter. Now I've converted this to filter those values when I click on a value. click on one of these. And if I pick a smaller one, it would show up better. But so I just rebuilt from scratch that first page, and the drill down feature is still here, because it's actually understanding the intersection of data that I'm trying to pass, and it sees that this drill down foots back there to the 95. But that I'm going to pass it back. No, we're going a little fast. We just kind of want to give you a little flavor from the different perspective of the OAC BI, looking at your data. And Jason, I'll pass it back to you to recap things.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg. Well, this brings us to the end of our 5-part webinar series. So we appreciate everyone joining. Before we get into questions today, I know there's a few questions people have asked. We'll jump to those here in just a minute. But just to summarize again, I think for those of you that are existing SBase users or OBIE users, hopefully the last 5 weeks has given you a lot of information and things to think about. We certainly would be interested in speaking with you further if you have additional questions on the whole approach to moving to OAC. From the specifics of SBase or OBIEE, or your reporting content, which, of course, in our 3rd session, we talked about the whole enterprise performance reporting cloud service, which is a nice complementary solution to OAC from a management reporting standpoint. And real excited about data visualization and kind of where we finished up today. Greg was kind of showing you some of the nice new reporting and analytic features that data visualization can bring to the table. And that particular tool, of course, because it's integrated within OAC, can leverage SBase or your traditional data warehouse sources, just as Greg was showing you. So I think the exciting part is as you look at your roadmap over the next 2 or 3 years, you can definitely see kind of a clear, hopefully, journey here to the Oracle Analytics Cloud. And we certainly here at Sierra-Cedar, would welcome the opportunity to speak with any of you further about that potential journey you may look at. And lastly, before we jump into questions, again, keeping in mind kind of the whole Oracle subscription. I know sometimes it can be very confusing if you talk to Oracle about the subscription side, but it's actually pretty simplified here with the latest release and how you can use their concept of universal credits and kind of on the fly expand out your shape size, as we were talking about, add more resources to your platform as a service environment, or move resources around. For example, we talked a lot about how you could increase resources in a production environment, decrease resources in a development environment. So it really gives you that flexibility, whereas in traditional on-premise systems, you would have to look at a much larger effort to do something like that. And with the universal credits, you can really just on the fly, your monthly subscription costs would vary. So that's where we could kind of help you understand how that would vary based on using these different products and applying more resources or taking advantage of more functionality in the cloud. So with that, appreciate everyone joining. We'll open it up for questions today. Michelle, can you walk through the questions?
Sure. Thank you, Jason, Greg, and Anil. If you haven't already, we now invite you to submit your questions in the webinar control panel. And our first question is, doesn't On-Premise OBIEE 12c also have data visualization licenses included?
I'll jump in on that one, although I know Jason would want it as well. The word included is no. If you buy OBIEE 12c on-premise, you'll have the right to purchase DV. So you're right, you can get to data visualization, but it is not included. So, and there'll be a price point where in Oracle will definitely, it's definitely more advantageous cost-wise to go to OAC BI for that reason. So it's not included, but you can get it.
Next question, does 11.119 have support until December of 2021? I thought all of 11G OBIEE support ends in December of this year.
So and Jason, you can correct me if you want, but here's what I actually, from talking with Oracle, OBIE 11.119 at the end of this year, in December, it comes off premium support. So as of December of this year, if you stay on 11.119, you'll have to start paying more money to get support. I think it's a 10% increase, but don't quote me on the actual amounts. So in that mode of you're paying more money to continue your support, the 11.119 is what extends to that 21 number. 11.117 fully ends in December of this year.
Next question.
And it is called Extended Support Service. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Anil.
Next question. We currently have agents that run each night as a part of our caching strategy to pre-populate most of our production dashboard content. You mentioned that this was not currently available in OAC BI. Is there a timeline for this functionality to be available?
Boy, I don't know, Anil, have you seen anything on that one yet? I'll let you, take a crack at that one. So.
Yeah. Not really, maybe in the future release, because we have seen some upgrades to OAC delivers. So initially when the delivers was launched, there is no SSL support, but I mean, last month we got that as well. If your mail server is SSL, yes, we can now connect. So I hope like in the future they consider that. But the way that the delivers work in OAC BI completely differs from how it works from on-premise. In OAC BI, so we have to go to the report and says like send email. There is no delivery option like I want to deliver it to the dashboard or anything like that. So it works a little different. But as of caching the seed, so I don't see like it is available right now, but in the future, definitely I think so. But in the meantime, we are trying a workaround of achieving it through a script. So I mean, we know like in our on-premise delivers, we run it, whatever we do it on the delivers tool. So it actually runs a command in the backend. So we are trying to achieve that using a command.
Okay, next question. Can OAC support data level security where we read the roles from a user, is checked in a stored procedure, and finds corresponding area regions from a security table in the database?
Yeah, Neil, go ahead and take that one. Yeah, because I know you've done some work in that area. So.
Yeah, I think they're talking about the BS SQL group provider mostly. And yes, I mean, it supports, but we have to migrate certain database tables back to the database as a service. But it depends on case-to-case basis, like how we are using. So I hear like they are using some extra database functionalities. So if that is the case, we have to go case by case and see like if everything is fully supported.
Yeah, that'd be one of those items in that pre-check that Anil talked about when we first look for assessing a migration. We look for those unique features just to assess what would it take it as I believe Anil, as you just said, those support tables that get looked at, we migrate those into that Oracle Database as a Services cloud just to integrate that login procedure. But we'd have to look at the individual one just to fully quantify the effort and tasks.
Next question. Can you establish a connection between OAC BI and Financial Cloud? How is that accomplished?
Yeah, go ahead, Anil. You can talk.
So Greg,
or go ahead. Yeah, Jason.
Well, I was just going to clarify, that what that question I think is getting at is, how you connect from OAC. What are your options to integrate with, ERP Cloud or Fusion Cloud from a financials or HCM perspective.
Okay.
So today there's a couple different options to do that. So in terms of Greg mentioned OAC Data Sync, and I know we talked a lot about that on on session 2 and 3. We covered options to use OAC Data Sync. So that's an option to pull data from Fusion ERP into OAC BI. And then there's also additional options where you could design something with like a BI publisher type of export import. And then of course there's ODI Cloud and other Oracle data integration options. But beyond that, Greg, what would you kind of add as your option to integrate OAC with ERP Cloud?
Yeah, I'll speak up on that. So obviously it's what's behind the question by integrate. If you have Fusion, as far as live reporting against it, meaning not extracting to a data warehouse solution, you have the OTBI, which really is just the Oracle BI cloud or version of it directly against that. So if you know how to build dashboards and reports and stuff in OBIE, you'll just get that with Fusion, or that option when you're purchasing what you want with it. So that's for the live production reporting. That also comes with BI Publisher working directly off of it. So for production reporting, I know I might be off topic here, but just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that's kind of what OTBI is, Oracle Transaction BI. That's kind of a version of BI in the cloud, but that's over. You can't get at that metadata model. It's pre-built over Fusion, but that is live production reporting. And Jason, what Jason was talking about as far as if I want to extract that data to integrate into more of a data warehouse solution, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud, Oracle's providing data sync as a way to schedule the data out. That's kind of the free way that comes with it. If it's something just that's more tactical and you want something quick, there are companies just using BI Publisher as a quick extracted text and they pass the data on, but that is a little bit more tactical and there's some size limits to using that approach and such. But yeah, data sync would be the one that comes to mind as far as just tools that come with OAC that we could leverage that connect directly to Fusion that we could kind of schedule to pull that out. But I don't know if I have anything offhand to add. That's been the hot question as more and more companies are starting to use Fusion as well. But Neil, unless you had anything to add to that. But yep.
The next question is on the OAC demo, the feature of adding year-to-date, quarter-to-date time periods. Is this a 12C feature or just OAC?
That was an S-based feature. So that's a good question. That's the kind of question I'm going to dig into at Kscope if anyone's going to attend the session there. But so S-base as a database gives us a lot more flexibility. If you're an OBIE person, in S-base, I can put a calculation in every dimension. Where in OBIE, it's more of a traditional relational data set that all your calculations go in the fact table. So that's actually leveraging S-based calculations. We create a point of view dimension, and it literally has 3 values of the periodic load data, QTD and YTD, and QTD and YTD are calculated metrics that are dynamically computing based on the time period selected. So now whether I use OBIE as a front end or data visualization as a front end, they both are leveraging the S-based database and can take advantage of those things. So, but if I'm doing OBIE or data visualization just over relational data, in that case, I'm using similar calculations as of today, the Yago and to-date type functions to get that. So that's the answer to that question.
Next question, how does the effort of upgrading from OBIE 11G to OBIE 12C compare to migrating to OAC BI?
I'll give the quick answer. Core tasks are identical. Probably the key slow step in expense, which actually is more on the OBIE on-premise 12C side, is on the hardware. It's recommended to be an out-of-place upgrade. We don't recommend upgrading over the top of your 11G environment to 12. We recommend having a new server, which most folks who have made that move often have upgraded the power of their box anyway. But you'll need to take the time and the expense of getting that new server and configuring it, and then the steps to migrate into that. So it actually, if we're comparing, typically the 12C migration actually takes more time and effort and cost for that hardware reason. But the other tasks typically are align fairly well. But if there's any detailed follow-up questions, I'll hand it over to Anil if anyone wants to submit on specifics on that.
Next question, can OAC BI connect to my on-premise Active Directory?
Yes,
Anil, you can
it
jump
can
on
connect
that.
to on-premise. Yes, it can connect to on-premise Active Directory. Yes, we can do that. And if anybody wants to migrate to Identity Cloud Service, yes, Oracle has that option also available.
Okay, thank you, Jason, Greg, and Anil. I believe we've covered all of our questions. Is there anything else before we wrap up today? Great, thank you everyone for joining us for this final session of our series. Please feel free to contact us with any further questions you may have on any of the 5 sessions, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.